Deportiva y con swing.
Deportiva y con swing.
La factoría del deporte desde New York para ti. Es una máquina.
Es una máquina
Pensada para ti.
pensada para ti. Número uno en las redes, dale like y compartir.
Con informaciones importantes siempre frescas.
Y con entrevistas que te ponen de cabeza.
Lo mejor del deporte lo encontrarás aquí.
Búscale en las redes, dale like y compartir.
Suscríbete,
Ay sí,
infórmate.
ok. Dale a la campana para que te llegue.
All those that are joining us live on SNY, on WFAN, as well as all the different Mets social channels and MLB Network. Thank you all again for joining. We're going to begin today's conference by introducing Mets President Sandy Alderson for some remarks. Sandy, please.
Thanks, Harold, and thanks everybody. On behalf of myself, Steve, the organization, thanks for participating with us today. It's my real pleasure to announce that Billy Eppler is the new general manager of the New York Mets. Billy has over 20 years of experience in the game, a variety of positions, including assistant general manager, tremendous and lengthy experience in the New York market. He understands the challenges that New York represents in terms of its fans, who are knowledgeable and passionate and demanding, as well as the big stage. So we're very happy that Billy is going to be with us. He's well respected in the organization, in the industry, well known within the organization. And we're extremely happy to have him. And he will have remarks here shortly. A couple of things I want to touch on before I turn it over to Billy. One is the process in which we ultimately selected Billy. This was not a linear process. This was not a matter of making inquiries, making offers on a serial basis. Billy is the only one who received an offer from Steve and the Mets. It was an exhaustive process. We talked to many people, and we're very happy that as a result, Billy is our new general manager. Secondly, I want to talk about the vetting process in connection with our search. It also was exhaustive. It was broader, deeper than any vetting process we had ever undergone. It involved not only inquiries with respect to those in the industry, those for whom he had worked, but also those with whom he had worked in an organization or outside the organization, the media, for example. So very happy that Billy is with us. It was a long process in terms of baseball calendar, but necessary, and we're very pleased with the outcome, and look forward to Billy hitting the ground running. So with that, I want to turn it over to Billy for his remarks.
Good. Thank you, Sandy. First off, I'd like to thank everybody for being on the call. I know this week has probably been trying for you since the news broke Monday afternoon. And so I appreciate your patience and hanging in there with me as we work through this. So I'm tremendously excited to be here and be part of the Mets organization. I'd like to thank Steve and Alex Cohen for giving me this opportunity. In our conversations as we went through this process and this dialogue, it was evident every step of the way that they're committed to building a championship caliber organization from top to bottom. I would also like to thank Sandy for your guidance and your support during the process, and know that I'm excited to be able to work alongside you, getting a chance to position myself with someone with your resume and baseball acumen is something I look forward to. To the Met fans, man, I cannot wait to connect with you in person. So I'll take you back to my first game seeing the Mets in 2005 at Shea Stadium. It was my first exposure in person. I felt your passion. I witnessed the electricity of the environment, and I'm sitting in the scout seats behind home plate, and I'm looking around the stadium and thinking to myself, this is what a baseball game was intended to look like. And just know that I look at the role of our baseball operations department as one to serve you, and we realize that we have a duty and an obligation to you, and we will take that seriously. As far as our vision for the Mets organization moving forward, we want to build and drive a culture that promotes an inclusive and collaborative environment that is defined by high operational standards. And I just want to reiterate that again, I'm thrilled to be here because, along with the 2009 World Series championship, this is a career highlight for me. And again, to the fans, we have a sizable list of things to do right now, from a managerial hire to coaching staff hires to free agency and trade market. We're going to kick it into high gear as soon as we actually wrap up here today. So thanks for hanging with me through this process. And again, I look forward to getting to work here with everybody throughout baseball operations.
Thank you very much, Billy. And thank you, Sandy. For all those intending to ask a question, a reminder that please use your raise your hand tab at the bottom of the screen. It's once you're called upon, if you could state your name and affiliation and who your question is intended for. And of course, you've got Sandy Alderson and Billy Eppler, as well as owner Steve Cohen, all available to you. We're going to begin with the first question coming from Steve Gelbs. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks a lot, Harold. Yep, Steve Gelbs here from SNY. And my first question is for Billy. First of all, congrats and welcome to the Mets. You mentioned that you've got a sizable list of things to do, pretty much right away. This is obviously a roster that over the last number of years has been expected to compete and for some reason just hasn't met those high expectations. When you look at this group, what are the areas that you feel you really do need to address this offseason? And I guess just overall, how much of an overhaul or a change do you feel that you guys are going to need going into next season?
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the question, and good to see you again. As far as our approach for this offseason, we want to tackle the free agent market as well as the trade market. We want to look for opportunities. In my dialogue with Steve and Sandy, it's evident that we're going to have some resources behind us. So I don't think anything eliminates itself at the outset here. And I look at the roster and definitely want to address the pitching. We've had player recently signed somewhere else in Noah, and just really want to reinforce the overall depth. We also are going to entertain things in the outfield and entertain things in the infield. But after this call, or shortly after this call, and some of the other obligations I have today, with respect to the media, I'm going to connect with the senior baseball operations group, and I want to hear from them, like what they think, and what ideas they have, and hit the ground running this afternoon and start. I'm still on West Coast time, so I've got a little bit longer day, and just start connecting with agents and teams. And I haven't, even over this last year, I haven't really unplugged from from a lot of my GM colleagues. I still have talked to them, throughout the last calendar year. So I'm just looking forward to plugging in and addressing this roster. But I think you can walk away from this knowing that we're going to be aggressive, and we're going to attack the pitching, infield, and outfield. So kind of all of the above.
Thanks. And Steve, I have one more for you. I remember last year, after you went through this process for the first time, you said you were somewhat surprised at how difficult it was to find some people for the front office, specifically, for the president of baseball operations. Obviously, you guys ran into some similar roadblocks this year and pivoted again towards just filling that GM role. What was your takeaway from the process this go round? Did you expect to have similar pushback, or did the difficulties catch you a bit off guard again?
Well, I mean, when you say pushback, I think there are lots of reasons why people decide that they're just not available. They're comfortable where they are. Their wives and kids are at a certain age where they don't want to move. We're coming out of COVID. There's still some, people just are still a little bit uncomfortable at this point. Moving to perhaps a big city, given COVID concerns. And so, that's understandable. People have contracts, right? I mean, let's not forget that. So, contracts are, they're contracts, right? I mean, contracts for a reason. I mean, when I give somebody a contract, I expect them to honor it too. So, it's not, there's a lot of reasons why it's hard to make it work at the time that is, where you're looking. What I can say is I'm really excited about working with Billy. Just to give you a little feedback, I came back from the MLB owner meetings, and I can tell you that just universal praise for the hiring. I mean, people coming up to me from everywhere saying that we got a real pro, well liked in the industry, well respected. And so, listen, I'm excited. Listen, I put a lot of time into this, and I always say, I've got a day job, so it's a relief to get somebody that I feel really good about. And just based on our conversations, I think it's going to be, he's going to be an easy person to work with. So I really look forward to the whole team getting going here and filling our needs.
Good. Thank you, Steve. Bill Ladson, your line is open.
Bill Watson, MLB.com. Congratulations, Billy. Billy, I got to ask you, what kind of manager are you looking for? Are you looking for a guy who has analytic, thinking, or is an old school, or both?
Thanks for the question, Bill, and I'm glad you asked it. Actually, I'd love to find somebody that checks every single box and is great in all areas. But it's interesting that you bring it up because over this past year, just learning and reading and kind of like rethinking some of the ways that you approach things. I wanted to be able to sit down with the senior baseball ops group, and then sit down with Steve and Sandy, and kind of all collectively talk about what kind of criteria we think might be important for the next manager of the Mets. And so that's a process that I'm going to start this afternoon. I have a little bit of my own feeling on that, but I'd rather hold back on giving exactly what that criteria is at this moment in time, because I want to have the group engage and get a sense for do you value, for example, tactical in-game management as your primary your primary criteria, your primary element? Do you value analytic in-game probabilistic thinking as your number one criteria, or do you manage ability to connect with the media and the fan base? Obviously, that's critical. And clubhouse culture. So all of these things, do you want somebody that coached in the minor league, for example? So I want to make sure I collect all of the thoughts from everybody, set forth what that criteria looks like, and then at that point, start to develop a candidate list.
I have one more question. How do you change the culture in the clubhouse and on the field? The reason why I'm asking, because the last 2 years, the Mets were supposed to win and they finished under 500. How do you change that culture?
I think a lot of that comes from the coaching staff and from the players themselves. When you have an environment where people feel that they can be vulnerable with each other, where they feel that they can trust one another, that there's almost like this element of psychological safety where you're not afraid to speak your mind. And you know that if you do speak your mind, that there's not going to be any repercussions behind that. So I think as you just kind of create that culture, that people start to feel more comfortable as they move forward.
Thank you. Disha, your line is open.
Hey, Billy, Disha Thosar with the New York Daily News. Just one question for you and then one for Steve. The offense featured a lot of underperforming players this past season, and just in general, it's a roster that hasn't played to its talent level. So how do you balance trusting them all to bounce back versus getting value if you traded some of them?
Thanks, Disha. So, the process that we'll look at when evaluating our offense is, what are the underlying process metrics that are kind of driving their performance? And was there an element of unluckiness? Do we expect that that the numbers on the back of the baseball card are maybe not, in fact, the real numbers that we would expect from that player to contribute? There's an element of, or I guess a framework for players that I tend to gravitate to, and I don't think this is really that unique or proprietary, because it's become kind of mainstay in baseball. But just to kind of get a little bit more granular on that, looking for players that are really good decision makers in the batter's box. They understand their swing decisions, and if a ball's over the white, that they're ready to attack it. And so a little bit more of a patiently but aggressive approach at the same time. And obviously, as far as team building is concerned in general, we're just going to try to really grow the run differential of the club as much as we can.
And then for Steve, both you and Sandy have stated a commitment to changing the culture of the Mets. With all due respect to Billy, in his last role, he ran an organization that brought in Mickey Callaway and saw a high-ranking employee indicted for providing opiates to players. So how do you just sort of reconcile the two? And is it something that you've talked about with Billy?
Well, we've done our due diligence, and it's an organization. Billy's just one person in that organization. We vetted it, in multiple ways. We spoke to a lot of people that were around the organization at that time. We spoke to people within baseball, and we're incredibly comfortable with Billy and his decision making and his ethics and his integrity.
Thank you, Steve. Dave, we'll come to you next. Your line's open.
Hey, Billy, congratulations and welcome back.
Thanks, Dave. Good to see you.
To this side of town anyway. Billy, with a lockout looming, we've seen some push in the industry already to get some players signed, and I think there could be some more. Do you feel that you have to kind of get moving on some player acquisition? And that said, can the manager hire wait? Because you are looking at a situation where there could be a transaction freeze. And do you feel an urgency to do the player side first and maybe worry about the manager side later on?
Great question, Dave. And again, good to see you, man. So last night I was starting to get a lot of texts from agents, and I responded to a lot of them saying you'll hear from me today. So yeah, I'm going to plug right into that. Absolutely. And look forward to engaging with those guys again on their players. And as far as the manager process, I don't expect it to be done overnight or even be done in the next week. And I know we're about to embark on a holiday week, but starting to have those conversations and carve out time, each day to to meeting a candidate, I think can be done simultaneously. Just as you manage your time, connecting with like I said, connecting with these agents though will be will be going on this afternoon.
Great. Thanks, Billy. And just one more for Sandy and Steve, if I could. Sandy, I know you described this position as potentially a one-year runway. It's not now. It's a 4-year deal for Billy, obviously. What did that change? You feel a lot more comfortable now giving Billy kind of a full autonomy to run the baseball situation that maybe you didn't before you talked to him and decided that he was the guy?
Well, first of all, I think, the 1-year runway may have been misunderstood. I think that, originally this offseason, we were looking for 2 hires. We ended up with 1 as we did last year. And as I told, Zach Scott last year, there's an opportunity here for a year at least to establish yourself, to grow to the point where we may not even do a search a year from now for an additional person or an additional person above the general manager role. So we will have a year's experience, and Steve and I will take a look at that at the end of the season, and Steve will make a decision about the direction he wants to go. But Billy has lots of opportunity here to establish himself, to grow, and have an impact on that decision a year from now.
Thank you, Sandy. Ed Coleman, we'll come to you next. Your line's open.
Hey, Billy, welcome back to New York.
Thanks, Ed.
You come from a scouting background, and analytics are becoming much more important in the game as well. But how do you weigh the eye test as an evaluator with the numbers that you're provided with every day, and to try to get the right blend?
Yeah, great question, Ed. And I'm glad you asked it because it comes up fairly regularly. So when we're looking at an evaluation on a player, we're going to take every angle and kind of walk 360 degrees around that player, and there's many actual elements of things that you can gather and glean from a player that are not picked up via the analytics platform, whether it's the radar tracking or some of the kinematic tracking that is available in the game now. But ultimately, watching how a player responds and how a player behaves to certain game situations, how their body reacts to things, those elements can never be incorporated, via the analytic platform. One of my mentors in Gene Michael, who was very, very instrumental in kind of teaching me or growing me, just outside of the traditional qualitative assessment where you talk about, hit for power and run and field and throw, et cetera, but really taught me about trying to evaluate a player's concentration or focus. And I've used this comparison a number of times that, he would look at hitters a lot in the on deck circle and try to see how they were approaching or how they looked in the on deck circle, and then how their body perhaps reacted to pitches or how an infielder moved. And so when I say how an infielder moved, I'm not just talking about how quick they move, but how soon they move or an angle that they take to the ball. And so taking those qualitative assessments and finding a way to formalize them, put them down on paper, and then integrate them with some of the information that you're getting that's more quantitative based, such as spin rates and batted ball trajectories and all these things. And when you can really put all of that together and then spit out a projection for a player, I think that's when you feel that you have all the tools at your disposal. And so that's kind of the process for evaluating a player that we'll go through.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ed. Next up, we'll go to Justin Descano.
Justin Descano, Bergen record. I've got one for Billy and then one for Steve. So first for Billy, congratulations. And I'm wondering, throughout the last decade, as you kind of worked your way up through baseball, what was your perception of the Mets from afar?
Thanks, Justin, and good to see you again, man. So my perception of the Mets from afar was an organization that had this, rabid fan base that cared and wanted to see their club do great things. And for reasons that happen in a lot of places, your depth gets challenged. And personally, that's one of my bigger takeaways over the last 10 years in baseball is just that importance of depth. I also suffered similarly at times when that was tested and you didn't have places to turn to, and it's just not, frankly, it's just not easy to go execute a trade, especially when the news gets out that you might have a hole on your roster. All of a sudden, the supply and demand trade-off definitely takes effect in that. But all in all, the resources that I talked to Steve about being able to have here give me a really good feeling that we'll be able to shore up some of those depth issues and really build a comprehensive best in class scouting operation, player development operation, performance and performance science and analytics operation. So those departments will ultimately drive the long-term success of the organization.
Thank you. And then for Steve, in your conversations with Billy throughout the process, what struck you most about his vision?
Well, I mean, like I said in the opening comments, we're dealing with someone with a vast array of experiences. He's a pro. I mean, he knows a lot about the game. He's, worked under some, really good people. So we were just impressed by his communication skills, his knowledge of the game. I think the players in the locker room are going to just enjoy communicating with him, talking to him. And so I think he brings a lot, different skill sets to the table. And I think that's what this organization needed.
Thank you, Steve. Tim Britton, your line is open.
Hey, this first question is for Sandy, and then I've got one for Billy. I'm Tim Britton with The Athletic. For Sandy, you've talked abstractly about what your role would be before the team had hired a general manager. Now that Billy's in place, what do you envision as your role in baseball operations?
Well, good question. Billy will be reporting to me, but just as I talked about, the opportunity for growth, I think that, we will certainly consult with one another, but I expect Billy to be driving this operation. I will be available as a resource. And as time goes on, what I would expect is that, Billy will have even more latitude than he will have immediately. But as time goes on, I would expect that latitude will expand and that, my role will diminish. So I don't expect to be heavily involved, but I will be available to Billy and whatever input he desires, I'll provide. And as time goes on, I think his, as I said, his role will expand.
Thanks. And then for Billy, when you hear Sandy talk about having, a one-year opportunity at least to show that you're that they don't need to make an additional hire potentially above you. How does that make you feel about the opportunity?
Well, that was conversation that we had, throughout this past week, and how that would go. And, in my conversations with Sandy, I understood that, this is not necessarily, a one-person job, but also understanding the importance of, how I particularly, look at the world as far as valuation of players, organizational philosophy, so on and so forth. And so, we know that if that opportunity exists, in the future, that I will have a role in the process with Sandy and Steve, and if that comes to pass, then I would welcome that opportunity, because I know that it'll be somebody that kind of looks at the world similar, or looks at the baseball world, I should say, similar to how I do.
Dan Martin, your line is open.
Hey, Billy. Coming from your stint with the Angels, what do you take from those 5 years? And obviously there wasn't a ton of success there. So what do you think you learned from that previous stint with Anaheim?
Yeah. So Dan, good to see you again. Thanks for the question, man. So upon arrival in Anaheim, there was this kind of convergence of circumstances. We had this, depleted farm system, which I think Keith Law described at the time as by far the worst he's ever seen. And there was a little bit of a move away from international talent. The club was in the penalty box in 15 and 16, meaning the penalty box, would mean, they couldn't sign any higher value international free agents. Their spending was capped on the amount of a bonus they could give to one particular player. And then there was some sizable contracts, parked on the major league roster. So, the lack of depth, I guess, made us dip into, into free agency to fill multiple holes on the roster. And when you're thin on that depth, any injuries you sustain, I should say, really make you fall through the ice. And we were having some successes early in 17 and 18, and then we'd be slammed with 2 season-ending injuries on the pitching staff. And quite frankly, we couldn't recover. That's why I alluded even earlier to the depth. That's a major takeaway. And then on the free agent front, we pursued, mainly shorter term and lower AAV deals because we had multiple holes that needed to be filled. And we did that, in an effort to not really double down on some of the contracts that maybe were on their later years or the downslope years. But those free agent deals, they didn't work out, or a number of those deals didn't work out. And it was done, I guess, in position, or it was done in an effort to position the club for real spending capability in 2020 and 2021, et cetera, as some of like the prospects that we took in, 16, 17, 18 drafts might be able to merge in. So, I didn't think at that moment in time in free agency that, if I reflect back on 17, 18, 19, that we really had a real, chance to kind of overtake Houston. So played a little bit of a safer, and, didn't want to burden the organization long term. But like I said, a lot of those, a number of those free agent deals didn't work out. So my biggest takeaway is the importance of depth. That would be, at least as far as constructing a major league roster. That's my biggest takeaway.
And from the Callaway hiring, I mean, when you reflect on that, based on what happened, is there anything that you can take from that, going forward and in the process of going through candidates, whether it's for managers or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, the industry in general, as Sandy and Steve alluded to, has a vetting process that's evolved, and we have greater resources because of it. In general, the Angel organization has been asked and have answered for it. And there's not really anything more specific I can add today. just that, like I said, that industry vetting process has evolved.
Tyler Kepner, your line is open.
All right. Hey, Billy, good to see you again, man. Congratulations.
Hey, Tyler, good to see you too.
My question is for Steve. What did you learn from this, first full year, at the head of the Mets, and how do you think your role will change or evolve compared to what it was this year?
Yeah, I think the major learning was if you're going to be in first place for 100 days, try to do it at the end of the season, not the middle of the season. I mean, that would be helpful. Listen, it's a first year. There's a lot of learnings. I'm just getting acquainted with baseball, getting up to speed on the language, getting up to speed on, just all the little intricacies. I mean, for an industry that's not a big industry, there's a lot of moving parts in running a baseball team, whether it's analytics, whether it's technology, whether it's, all sorts of player development and health. And so there's a lot of moving parts there, and which is why it's really important that we build all of these areas out and find the best and brightest and what is my job? My job is to provide the resources, find the people who can run these areas with Sandy and find these people. So, and then let them do their thing. Okay. I mean, it's not my job to dictate who the players are going to be. My job is to, when they come to me, is to say, yeah, let's do it. Let's spend on this. Let's make this trade. I agree. But I want to delegate out to my people. I want to give them a lot of rope, and let them make decisions. I mean, ultimately, if you're going to interfere in every decision, it's not going to work. At least that's how I've run my other businesses, and that's done well. And I expect to run it the same way here. And that's sort of the plan. You're not going to fix everything the first year. I call it a little bit of a treasure hunt. As you go through the organization, you find things that you need to fix, and that's sort of what I would have expected coming into an organization that was under-resourced. And we're in the process. We've made progress last year. There are areas that I would say we've made significant hires and devoted resources to, and there's probably other areas we can do more of this year. And that's the goal. The goal is to, like I said at the beginning, to build an organization top down, a top-notch organization that can sustain winning year in, year out.
How do you plan to use Twitter going forward? And was that sort of overemphasized or misunderstood at some times?
What do you mean misunderstood?
Well, what is the influence of your whatever messages you put out there? Were people emphasizing that too much?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. Maybe it was novel, right? I mean, owners haven't really done much of that. And so it was new, it was novel. It was also, I was trying to connect with the fans. And I actually think I was pretty successful at that. I think just getting feedback from people from the ballpark and around the area saying, yeah, they really enjoy it. They actually appreciate that type of interaction with the owner. Twitter's a tough place to do it in general because it tends to be combative. As you know, all of you who are tweeting out there, you can imagine, what the comments are. And so it's a tough place to get your message across. And so we'll see. I mean, I'm a busy guy, and there was a lot of that was during COVID. And, and so, I'll continue to tweet, probably not as much as I did previously. Especially during the search, I wanted to respect the candidacies of the potential, people we were talking to, and didn't want to make it a public search. And so didn't want to turn this into a game of some kind. Now, in the end, the media is interested in finding out what we're doing. And so it becomes a public search, and I was trying to keep it as private as possible. So, I try to stay off of Twitter as part of that. And so now that's over, I'll probably get back on and give it another shot and see how it goes. But, we'll see. I think people like it, so why not keep going?
Next up will be Ryan Field.
Ryan Field, ABC7 here in New York. Steve, this question is for you. You talk about lessons learned when you think about your first go round into free agency. Were there any takeaways that maybe have caused you to change your approach this time around? And what would make this a successful offseason in your eyes?
Well, listen, I'm going to listen to our people and their recommendations. They're going to be, I expect to, our budget today without even signing anybody is already at 185 million or so. So, and we have, if we're going to find the right type of talent, it's going to probably be either trades with other clubs or free agents. We don't really have a lot in our farm system to supplement what we need. And so it's going to require probably spending, and that's what's going to happen. And I've let Billy know that I'm willing to, for the right deals and the right free agents, to go and get the players we need. We want to be competitive, right? We want to win our division and be in the playoffs and get deep into the playoffs, right? So if we've got to field a team that has the ability to do that. And so I've let Billy and Sandy know that it's whatever they need. And I'm open to their suggestions and recommendations. And the goal is to put a very competitive team on the field.
Brad Heller, your line is open.
Brad Heller, WCBS 880. This question is for Billy. First of all, congratulations. Sandy mentioned your experience in New York as being a big part of a big positive on your resume in landing this job. Looking at that experience, what do you take away? What specifics that you think can help you in this position?
Thanks, Brad. So New York, magical place. Awesome. I came here in 2005, and I was born in Southern California and did some time in Connecticut for college, and a little time in Denver, a little time in Tampa, and then I got to New York, and it was something. Big buildings, it's intimidating. It makes you feel really small. But as you go and you learn and evolve, the city starts to teach you. I think the city teaches patience. I think the city teaches resiliency and humility. And there's really no other place like it. And it's special. And I miss it. I didn't miss an opportunity to come back if my former club was playing out here. Because I did. I miss the city. And so you learn about how the fans care about their club. And you see the gear as you're walking through town. You see the replay maybe on the up on the TV if you're walking back to your apartment or back to your home, and you just feel this. I started to feel this sense of responsibility to the fan base, that they're wearing the gear, they're watching the games, they're completely invested. So you have a duty to them. And it felt like this just awesome responsibility. And that's my takeaway from New York, is that I have this responsibility, and this whole baseball operations, our players, we just have this responsibility. And it's fun to have it and to plug in. So you know, that's kind of my takeaway from my time in New York.
And one more, if I may, your experience on the other side, on the agency side for the couple of months, learn any tricks of the trade that might help you as you start making those phone calls, maybe even later today and over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, maybe a couple. No, actually, you know, when I you know, made the decision to join that group, you know, it was a unique opportunity to walk into this major, you know, humongous talent agency with a massive platform and loads of resources and tools, and you know, it was we were going to be allowed to really innovate and push in the player development and care space, and those are things that, you know, those are things that I really enjoy doing, and you know, they're building this comprehensive platform to really serve their athletes, and you know, frankly, a lot of what they were asking me to do was fairly similar to being a general manager, maybe more so to being like a scouting director as well as a player development director. But you know, in my time there, you know, you do learn, you know, you do learn things, and it was a good experience, absolutely. And I thank those guys for giving me that opportunity, and they're going to do something special.
Randy Miller, your line is open.
Hi, Billy. Last night, Brian Cashman talked about you getting the job, raved about the job that you did working for him. I'm wondering what you learned from Brian, and also what are your thoughts on being the rival GM to him now? And the Yankees and Mets haven't made many trades over the years. Because of your relationship, could you possibly see more talks of trades coming down the road?
Thanks, Randy. It's interesting that you bring that up because, you know, over the years, we never made any trades, even when I was with the Angels. And I think it's because we maybe have some similar methodologies for valuing players, which wouldn't be a shocker. And so, yeah, I'm not really expecting to do a lot of transactions, but as far as the dialogue, you know, we have a regular dialogue. I think even over the past year, I mean, we don't go a week without talking to each other. And you know, he was a tremendous mentor to me, and somebody that means a lot. So yeah, just in as far as like what I learned there, you know, being there for 11 years and, you know, having the success that we did, I just, you know, walked into I just approached that job as much of a sponge as I could be, right? There were so many people there to learn from throughout that organization. I mentioned Stick and, you know, Damon Oppenheimer and Mark Newman and, you know, Donnie Roland, and just, you know, people that were, you know, leading different departments and kind of understanding how they looked at things. And then, you know, really working in lockstep with Michael Fishman and you know, trying to integrate our processes for, you know, qualitative evaluating and quantitative evaluating. And so I just take so much of kind of just the operational methodology away from there, and you know, look forward to you know, to continuing to evolve and grow from those experiences. But you know, as far as Brian's impact on me, it's been, you know, monumental, and I appreciate him for that.
Thank you, Billy. Barry Bloom, will come to you next.
Hi, guys. Nice to see you all again. Billy, congratulations. I think it would be remiss for me to not congratulate you on the evolution of Ohtani and where he went this year. And you were the guy who took the chance on him with a grade 1 tear in his elbow back then, and he really came to fruition with everything last night. So congratulations on that too. As far as the questions go, getting back to the labor situation, with all the things that you want to do, in the off season, if you wind up having a work stoppage in a week or so, how does that affect all of it? And maybe from Steve's point of view, you just came from an owners meeting. Where are the owners on this right now with 11 days to go towards the deadline?
Well, I mean, I leave the negotiating to the commissioner and his and the people doing the negotiating up there, and obviously, doing what they need to do, and we'll see what happens. I let them handle that.
And I'll piggyback, Barry, and circle back with with the answer to your question as far as how we would approach the winter time. And again, thanks for the congratulations, but they really go to they go to Shohei. So remarkable year, and I'm proud of him and happy for him. But as far as the off season is concerned in general, I mean, most of the time in a traditional off season, which hopefully starts November 1, because you're playing so deep, you're gonna start and engage in free agency, absent any coaching staff decisions that you have to make, and you engage in that free agency, and then you engage in the trade market, and you even start dialogue with other teams even in October, even if you're still playing, to get a sense of what maybe clubs want to do during the wintertime. And you evolve through the marketplace, and you have your initial conversations, and you get a sense of the expectations of some of the players and the comfort level with some of the players as far as playing in your market, or in a lot of cases these guys are going to be moving around, and so you want to see if there's a family dynamic or what have you that maybe would dissuade them from moving, and then as you kind of gain all that information and evolve through the off season, you then start getting into a time before spring training where you can really dive into processes, player development processes, because now you're on the verge of collecting everybody back for spring training, and you want to see, do we want to rethink how we do things, and do we want to implement a new processes? So if we're faced with a period where a period where we have to kind of move that order of operations around, that's a really long-winded way of saying there's plenty to do, and coming in day one into an organization, I have to do a lot of listening, and a lot of listening to learn, and so that's what I would spend all of my time doing.
Very good. I believe we have time for one more. Pat Ragazzo, your line is open.
Pat Ragazzo of Sports Illustrated. Welcome back to New York, Billy, and congratulations. You mentioned during your last stint with the Angels where, a lack of depth kind of caused you to try and fill holes in free agency. And, Steve and Sandy mentioned, the lack of depth in the farm system right now. So how do you avoid, kind of making those same mistakes and going down that path again this time around when there are clearly holes to fill, while also trying to build up the farm system?
Yeah, great question. And thanks, Pat, and good to see you. So ultimately, there's some strength in this farm system. As I looked at it, there's a number of guys that are top 100 prospects, but we don't want to move them. And in the conversations with Steve and getting a sense to understand our resources, we'll be able to take a little bit bigger swings in free agency. Like I alluded to at the start, I don't think anything's ruled out right now, and so that's gonna provide a little bit more operational runway to look at potentially a different class of player in free agency, and just so we can talk a little bit more in detail on the organizational trajectory and maybe what we're going to try to do, is we really want to center our framework for decision making here around maximizing our cumulative World Series odds over a long-term time horizon. So what that means is like, you know, a great team maybe starts the season with this 15, 16%. I'm talking like the best team, maybe a 15, 16% chance of winning the World Series. And then you have these really good teams that, you know, are probably going to be, you know, over around 10, 12% chance of winning the World Series. And, you know, if we, you know, make our decisions in service of maximizing and building those odds, and we build that over this several year time horizon, then we create sustainability. And then the free agent spending can be born more out of opportunity than necessity. And so making those decisions and having the organizational discipline to avoid, you know, impulsive decisions that maybe give up, you know, large amounts of future World Series odds in exchange for some smaller gains right now. You know, we want to avoid those decisions. And so a way to do that is to make sure you hold on to the prospects that you have, which, you know, in turn makes you have to invest a little bit more into free agent spending. And, you know, that's, you know, I know Steve, you know, talked about his job and his role in that, and it's the toughest role because you know, he's got to sign the front of the check, and so we want to make sure that we're making really good decisions on how to invest that.
Billy, with that, we will conclude our press conference. We'd like to thank you, Steve and Sandy, for participating and thank everybody for joining today's call. This will conclude today's Zoom, and we look.
Máquina Deportiva, lo mejor del mundo del deporte, con análisis, comentarios e entrevistas.